members of the media have been hyperventilating over the U.S. troop withdrawal in Afghanistan and essentially what that led to. It certainly has been a chaotic scene as Afghan citizens are attempting to flee. The Taliban took over Afghanistan by essentially taking control of Kabul over last weekend. And so what's amazing is in my opinion, faux concerns of some members of the media, which you're about to see in this video.
Would you say that there is no interest for us having some presence on the borders of Iran, on the borders of Pakistan, on the borders of near China? Would you, or Tajikistan? Would you say that we should just give that up?
I would say that the president does not believe that the United States should be fighting and dying in a war for the purpose of sustaining American military boots near Tajikistan or Pakistan or Iran. No, I would say that is something that is not. What you just laid out as a national security interest, we would not agree that it is right to ask American soldiers to risk their lives for the purpose of maintaining a presence near Tajikistan.
It's kind of funny.
It was one of the most ridiculous questions, I think. I mean,
what about Tajikistan? You're just gonna give Tajikistan up? You're just gonna give that up? I mean, I love the framing of that. You're just gonna give that up? What about Tajikistan? What about our precious base in Tajikistan, folks? It's almost like Trump. It's like the beautiful base in Tajikistan, folks, is one of my favorite bases. It's one of my favorite bases. They have a great little McDonald's out there in Tajikistan. It's the first McDonald's ever. And the good people of Tajikistan, they love their McDonald's, and it was just really funny.
They're known for being great rakers of the forests. They rake the forest better than we do here in California, folks. Tajikistan. It's not to say that we don't care about the people of Tajikistan. It is to say, though, that reporter does not really care about Tajikistan. No. It's really about perpetuating more of the failed U.S. foreign policy in that region. That's what this is about.
Yeah, I mean, the media is always the mainstream media is always very pro-war. And we know this. We know this intellectually, but it is also bracing and wild to see it play out in real time, to just full on, the past couple days have just been absolutely mind-blowing in terms of just the full-on assault from every side toward the Biden administration's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. It was just, I mean, everywhere. Every sector of the media is just barraging him. And to their credit, Anthony Blinken, who I hate, and Biden, Same. Who I'm not a fan of at all. They're doing the right thing, which is just no, shut up. No, mm-hmm. they're not even trying to wiffle waffle and be maybe we'll do they're just no, shut up. No. When that guy's he's what about Tajikistan? Blinken's no, I don't think we need to do this for the presence in Tajikistan. Shut the fuck up. And in Biden, when in his interviews that he's done post the pullout, to his credit, again, I saw the one with George Stephanopoulos where Stephanopoulos was come on, can't you just say, you made a mistake, Joe, this was really bad, and Joe Biden's no, I'm not saying that. And I don't care what you think. And I'm just I didn't expect this. I just didn't expect this at all. I didn't expect this level of firmness in that decision. I expected them to waffle a lot more. And when there were reports that they were going to send troops back to maybe I was okay, this is it. This is what they're going to do. They're just going to as soon as shit starts to go bad, they're just going to send more troops. And
I was worried about that. Yeah. They have sent troops specifically to help with evacuating U.S. citizens in the region, but they're not re-engaging in that failed war. And so, look, we should never think about it as what's in the heart of these politicians or these administration officials. Is it because they have good moral character that they decided to that none of that matters. Everything is a political calculation. So the media can hyperventilate all it wants, but the fact of the matter is my speculation is this will have absolutely no negative impact on Biden's so-called legacy. Right now, his numbers are dipping, and sure, maybe the chaotic scenes out of Afghanistan have a little bit to do with it. I think it has more to do with the fact that COVID is spiking again throughout the country, and we're seeing mask mandates again throughout the country, certain guidelines being implemented. But Americans want to focus on fixing things at home. So no one's sitting around the dinner table right now talking about their concerns about Tajikistan or any of that. Like, my heart breaks for some of the Afghan citizens who are dealing with brutal situations right now. You hear the stories about them trying to flee, literally holding on to military planes and dying as a result, because you can't just hold on to a plane and make your way back to, or make your way to any country that way. So it is heartbreaking in that regard. But I think what this all demonstrates is just how, honestly, hollow our efforts were in Afghanistan regarding nation building, right? Like, this was really a way, and I'll get into it in more detail in my Decode segment this week. This is really more about redistributing wealth from the bottom to the top. This is all about weapons, being manufactured and sold during this war. And now all those weapons have gone from the Afghan National Army to the Taliban. That's it.
Yeah. I just, I in terms of the political calculus, I think that in terms of Joe Biden's legacy, this is great for Joe Biden's legacy. Like, the correct decisions tend to, with hindsight and with time and all that stuff, tend to be vindicated in the public's imagination. Certain decisions that now look to us like no-brainers that presidents took, back in the day, at the time were seen as controversial or whatever, and then with time that just kind of fades away. So this, for Joe Biden's legacy, is great. I mean, I don't know if he understands it in those terms, but it's great. In the short term, it's brave because, I think that the media still matters in terms of shaping certain narratives, and something like this, we could have predicted the media reaction to it, which is just total blanket hostility. I mean, we were talking about in our pre-production chat just how, the media's treatment of Donald Trump was just entirely negative throughout. I'm not saying that was necessarily a bad thing, but just negative coverage for everything, except for the time he decided to bomb Syria. And I remember Brian Williams going like, "We are awed by the beauty of our weapons. In the immortal words of Leonard Cohen, we're just these missiles, these cruise missiles flying over Syria. It gives a little tingle in my little wee spot when I see the president do that." And they just like, the media just like, I was just like, what the like, all of these people who are just like, Trump is just a dangerous, all of a sudden are now like, yeah, this is great. We love this. We love this. We love this. And with Biden, there's a little bit of the opposite going on, where the media treatment of Biden has been pretty soft. I find, I find that the media just kind of has like a Trump hangover, and that they're just like, there's just like a generally soft treatment of the Biden administration. I mean, there's just the fact that he's just never around is not like discussed. They fucking love his press secretary. They all want to make out with her and tell her that she's the greatest thing that ever happened, which I just find so strange. And then now that he does this, they're like, this is just like they just snap into place, and total blanket hostility. It's pretty remarkable. I gotta say, it's just, yeah.
So the hostility that I noticed, it was pretty clear to me throughout the week, was from Jake Tapper. And he's being celebrated by liberals. Like, his coverage of this has been celebrated. I'm just seeing the way they're reacting to it on Twitter. So I mean, that question from that press conference was bad. But all week long, if you've been watching Jake Tapper on CNN, here's the way that he's covered the situation.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, where the state of our union is watching a tragic foreign policy disaster unfold before our eyes. Weeks before the 20th anniversary of 9/11 and the deadline for President Biden's complete withdrawal of U.S. service members, the Taliban are laying waste to all the gains in that country. Having seized much of Afghanistan, the Taliban are now at the gates of the capital city of Kabul. This is not just about the overall idea of leaving Afghanistan. This is about leaving hastily and ineptly. Secretary Blinken, how did President Biden get this so wrong? You've been listening to President Biden speaking at the White House, forced to talk about the worsening crisis in Afghanistan, forced to speak to the nation after the calamity of the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. The president stated that he stands squarely behind the decision he made to withdraw all U.S. forces from Afghanistan, even though he has, in fact, been forced to send roughly 6,000 back in. The president saying, in fact, that if anything, the events of the last few days, this foreign policy and humanitarian disaster, proves to him that he made the right decision, given the fleeing of Afghan politicians from the country and the collapse of the Afghan military.
He's just the smarmiest. He's just the smarmiest fuck. He drives me crazy because, like, his whole thing is like, I love the troops. I stand with the troops and the veterans. He does all kinds of events, and he's just, you know, that's his thing. That's his brand. He's like, he drops all editorial kind of pretense of neutrality when it comes to the troops and the veterans. And what do you think the fucking Afghanistan war does to these people? Like, this like pointless war that just turns like young American men into murderous psychopaths because they're just there, and they all get PTSD. Tons of them get maimed. Like, what? Like, he drives me absolutely insane. I really can't stand that just smarmy pose of like, well, this is a humanitarian and foreign policy disaster, and you know, like the Joe Biden just got it so wrong. And this idea that there was a quote unquote competent way to do the pullout. That there's just some way in which, like, you're pulling out in an orderly fashion, and you know, the forces on the ground are just like, okay, let's respect the timetables and stuff like that. Is just both. First of all, it's a fantasy of imagination of what reality is on the ground in Afghanistan, and it's also a fantasy in terms of what the competence of the U.S. war machine is. The U.S. war machine is a bumbling, disastrous behemoth that doesn't do anything. That's just the way we, not just the war machine, but like things at home. We can't even get the federal rental assistance payments out. Something as simple as getting checks into people's hands. We can't do that. You think we're going to pull out of Afghanistan in some kind of neat, perfect way? It's rip the Band-Aid off. Get out. We got to get out. Like, that's just, I don't know. It just drives me crazy.
And look, the humanitarian crisis that is taking place on the ground in Afghanistan right now was a crisis that we started, right?
Yeah.
The Taliban was empowered by the United States. And it's important to get into the history of that and understand, because, you know, we're not in any way minimizing any of the pain and suffering that Afghans are facing right now. My point is that U.S. intervention in Afghanistan, even before the Afghanistan war began in 2001, destroyed that country. Okay. And it was all because we wanted to defeat the Soviets. We're the ones who empowered Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. And so to pretend as though, you know, keeping the US in there to continue these interventions and these forever wars is somehow the more humane option, it's just a brazen lie to the American people. And we're not going to stand for it here at Jacobin.
The U.S. invasion of Afghanistan has led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Afghans. Okay. The Taliban was in power before the U.S. Invaded in 2001, and they're a bad regime. Like, they're bad, but they weren't like out there murdering hundreds of thousands of people. The decision by the U.S. to invade has led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. So I'm sorry, like, that is the change. If you're doing like a science experiment, that is the variable, was the U.S. invasion. Had the U.S. not invaded, the Taliban would still be in power. The same exact situation that we have today, without the hundreds of thousands of deaths. I mean,
and also without them having, without them having all of this weaponry that we provided to the now defunct Afghan National Army.
If you enjoyed this clip from Jacobin Weekends, please hit like and subscribe. You can also watch the full episode or catch any future live stream by clicking the join button below and becoming a Jacobin YouTube member. Thank you.